All right, Raiders fans, let's dive into what's been swirling around Las Vegas lately, because the coaching search has turned into one of the most unpredictable storylines in the NFL. If you've been paying attention, you know the Raiders have been interviewing candidates, and the rumor mill is spinning faster than ever. There's been a lot of chatter about who could be the next head coach, and honestly, some of it makes sense while other parts feel like pure speculation. But I'm here to break down what we actually know, what we're hearing, and what could realistically happen. First off, let's talk about Joe Brady. The Raiders reportedly interviewed the Bills' offensive coordinator for their head coaching vacancy. Now, I've been talking to people around the league and reaching out to sources, and the more I learned, the more I'm thinking Brady is more valuable as an offensive coordinator than as a head coach. Look at the bigger picture. The Bills have a head coaching opening right now. If they're not willing to promote him to the top job, why should the Raiders? Josh Allen has spoken highly of Brady, and he's been with that organization for a long time. But if the Bills don't think he's ready to lead the team, that tells you something. If the Raiders want him, it makes more sense to bring him in as an OC, especially if they decide to hire a defensive-minded head coach. And here's the thing. If you're going to take a risk on Joe Brady as your head coach, you might as well take the risk on Davis Webb. At least with Webb, there's a sense that he's being groomed for a bigger role and has a clear offensive identity. Brady's success in Buffalo is tied closely to the system and the quarterback. That doesn't mean he's not talented, but it does mean there's a lot of uncertainty if he's put in charge of an entire franchise. Now, moving on to another name that's popped up, Chris Shula, the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. This one came from Vincent Bonser, and he's the only person reporting it right now. That means you should take it with a grain of salt, especially given how unreliable some Raiders beat writers can be. But the timing is interesting. When news broke that the Raiders requested an interview with Brian Daboll, it got people thinking. Daboll's name first came up in connection to Brian Flores. The idea was that Flores would be the head coach and Daboll would be the offensive coordinator. But then Flores became a questionable candidate because of concerns about whether he could build the staff the Raiders desperately need. So if the Raiders are considering a defensive-minded head coach like Jesse Minter, who was reportedly their top choice before he took the Ravens job, then the next step is finding a strong offensive coordinator. That's where someone like Chris Shula could fit into the picture. The Raiders could theoretically bring in Shula as head coach and pair him with a top-tier offensive coordinator like Brian Daboll. It's not a crazy idea. The problem is, it all depends on timing and whether the Raiders are willing to wait for the right fit. And that brings us to the issue of timing in the NFL coaching search. This week is restricted for many teams. Only second interviews are allowed, and for teams that fired their head coach late, like the Bills, they can't bring in candidates like Clint Kubiak right now. That restriction creates opportunities for teams like the Raiders. If they want to move fast and secure a top candidate, they might be in a better position than some other teams. But that also means they have to decide whether they want to wait or strike while the iron is hot. Speaking of Clint Kubiak, this is where things get really interesting. He's the name a lot of Raiders fans want, and for good reason. His work with the Seahawks, especially with a quarterback like Sam Darnold, showed that he's not afraid to ride or die with his quarterback and design a creative offense that can build around a young passer. In the game against the Rams, he showed how willing he is to commit to a game plan, feeding the running game early and then opening things up for the pass when the time was right. That kind of confidence and offensive creativity is exactly what you want with a rookie quarterback. And it's one of the reasons why fans have been so enamored with him. But here's the catch. The Raiders can't hire Kubiak right now. The rules around Super Bowl week interviews are strict. Teams are only allowed to conduct Super Bowl bye-week interviews if they have already held a previous interview with the candidate. The Raiders interviewed Kubiak on Friday, January 9th, but the initial interviews can't start until February 9th. So if the Raiders want to interview him, they could do a virtual interview between January 26th and February 1st, but they can't meet in person until after February 9th, and they can't sign a contract until the Seahawks season is over. That's a major issue because it means the Raiders might have to decide whether they want to wait for Kubiak or move on to someone they can hire now. And if the Bills decide to pursue Kubiak, that could complicate things even more. The Bills' job is arguably the best in the league because of Josh Allen, and if Kubiak is truly a top candidate, it makes sense why he would consider it. But the Raiders have a roster that could fit his offense incredibly well, and that's where the debate gets heated. The key question for Raiders fans is this. Do you want the team to wait until February 9th to pursue Q back? Or do you want them to hire a head coach now? Because there's a real chance that the Raiders could lose out on their top target if they wait. If they believe Q back is the best coach for the job, they need to put everything on the table and make the move. The Raiders have a unique advantage in this coaching cycle. They have a #1 overall pick, they have a ton of salary cap space, and they have multiple draft picks. This is a franchise that needs to stop playing it safe and start making bold decisions. And that brings us to Davis Webb, who is now being viewed as a strong candidate for the Raiders' job. According to reports, the Raiders are expected to meet with Webb this week, and it's his second interview with the team. Meanwhile, his interview with the Bills is over Zoom, which is a sign that he's not yet considered a top priority for them. The fact that the Raiders are bringing him in for a second in-person interview is significant. It suggests that the organization is taking him seriously and that they might be willing to move quickly if they feel he's the right fit. Now, here's where things get even more intriguing. I'm hearing from sources that one of the Raiders owners is flying into Las Vegas today in preparation for hiring a coach. That's a big deal. It indicates that the organization is not just interviewing candidates casually. They're actively preparing to make a decision. And the fact that an owner is involved at this stage suggests that Davis Webb might be more than just a candidate. They could be considering him as the real option. That said, I'm not saying the Raiders are definitely hiring Webb, but the amount of smoke around him is hard to ignore. If an owner is flying in for an interview, it shows the level of importance the team is placing on the process. Webb has a strong reputation for developing quarterbacks, and that's something the Raiders desperately need if they're going to build around their young quarterback next season. Whether you like the idea or not, the Raiders seem to be taking him seriously, and that alone should make Raider Nation pay attention. Before we move into the next wave of coaching rumors, let's circle back to why the Raiders are in such a precarious spot right now. The franchise has been stuck in this cycle for more than 2 decades, and the fan base has been starved for stability and real progress. The coaching hire is not just a headline. It's the foundation of the next era. The Raiders have been one of the most inconsistent teams in the NFL, and the coaching search has to be more than just a checklist of names. It has to be a strategic decision that fits the roster, the quarterback situation, and the overall culture of the organization. That's why this whole process feels so high stakes. Now, one of the most interesting things about the current situation is how the Raiders are balancing the need for speed versus the need for the right fit. The NFL coaching carousel moves fast, and if you wait too long, you can miss out on your top candidate. But if you move too quickly, you risk settling for a coach who isn't the best long-term solution. That's the dilemma the Raiders are facing right now. On one hand, they can make a quick hire and get the staff building process started. On the other hand, they could wait for the coach they truly want, even if that means delaying everything by a couple of weeks. It's a tough call, but it's one the Raiders need to get right. Let's talk about Davis Webb again, because the more I think about it, the more it seems like he could be the hidden key to this whole situation. Webb is someone who has been working behind the scenes for a while, and he's built a reputation as a strong quarterback developer. That's a rare trait in today's NFL, and it's something the Raiders have been missing for years. The organization has not had a consistent approach to developing quarterbacks, and it's one of the reasons the team has struggled. If Webb can come in and build a system that develops a young quarterback, that could change the trajectory of the franchise. But the question is whether the Raiders believe Webb is the right man to lead the entire organization. A head coach is more than just an offensive mind or a quarterback whisperer. A head coach has to manage the entire team, build a culture, hire the right coordinators, and navigate the pressure of the NFL. Webb has a lot of potential, but he's still relatively unproven as a head coach. That's why some fans are skeptical. They want someone with more experience, someone who has already proven they can handle the full weight of the job. That's where the idea of hiring Webb as the offensive coordinator comes in. If the Raiders bring in a defensive-minded head coach, Webb could be the perfect complement. He could run the offense and develop the quarterback while the head coach focuses on the overall team structure and defense. That's a realistic scenario, and it might be the best way to maximize Webb's strengths without putting too much pressure on him right away. But if the Raiders truly believe he's the right man for the job, then they have to commit to him as the head coach. They can't hedge their bets. They have to go all in. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin, the potential for the Raiders to bring in a defensive-minded head coach. That idea has gained traction because the Raiders have a roster that could be built around a strong defense. The team has some talent on that side of the ball, and if they can find the right defensive leader, it could set the foundation for long-term success. The key is finding someone who can also find the right offensive coordinator. That's been the Raiders' biggest problem for years. They've had a lot of defensive coaches come through, but they've never found the offensive partner that could turn the team into a complete unit. The Raiders have also been linked to the idea of hiring someone like Chris Shula or another defensive coordinator as the head coach. It's an interesting concept because it shows the organization is thinking outside the box. But it also raises questions about whether the Raiders are ready to commit to a defensive-first identity. The NFL is a quarterback-driven league, and if the Raiders are going to build around a young quarterback, they need an offensive vision that can develop him. If they hire a defensive-minded head coach, they better make sure they have an offensive coordinator who can carry that vision. And then there's the issue of the Bills. The Bills have a head coaching vacancy, and that changes everything. If the Bills decide to pursue a candidate like Clint Kubiak or another top coach, it could create a domino effect. The Raiders might lose their top target, and suddenly the whole coaching search changes. That's why timing is so important. The Raiders need to decide whether they want to wait for their top target or move quickly to secure someone else. It's a gamble either way, but the Raiders need to make sure they're not left behind. Now, let's address the reality of the coaching market. The NFL is a business, and teams are always looking for an edge. If the Raiders believe they have the best candidate in Davis Webb, they need to act like it. They need to show the league that they're serious about building a winning culture. That means putting their chips on the table and making a bold move. The Raiders have a unique advantage in this cycle, and they need to use it. They have a number 1 overall pick, plenty of salary cap space, and a stacked draft position. This is the kind of situation where a team can change its trajectory in one off-season if they make the right decisions. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Could the unthinkable be happening? Raiders fans might be in for the shock of their lives after a recent sighting sent social media into a frenzy. Mark Davis, the team's notoriously private owner, was reportedly seen dining with none other than Jon Gruden, the former head coach whose departure left the franchise in disarray. The images, though informal, show Davis and Gruden engaged in what appeared to be a serious, yet cordial conversation. Naturally, speculation erupted immediately. Could this dinner be the prelude to one of the most sensational coaching returns in NFL history? Gruden's tenure with the Raiders was nothing short of legendary. Despite the controversies that led to his sudden exit, his connection to the team and the city remains undeniable. Fans who have longed for the days of high-octane offense and charismatic leadership are now fantasizing about a full-fledged comeback. Some argue that this could be the perfect storm. Davis, known for his willingness to make bold moves, might see Gruden as the missing piece to elevate the Raiders back to contention. Others caution that such speculation is premature, noting that private meetings between an owner and a former coach can mean anything from consulting roles to personal matters. Still, the timing and setting are fueling the rumor mill. Insider whispers suggest that Davis has been actively seeking to reshape the Raiders' identity, and a reunion with Gruden would instantly galvanize the fan base. Social media has erupted with memes, fan edits, and passionate pleas, all imagining Gruden walking back into the Raiders' locker room as if no time has passed. Every angle of this encounter is being dissected. The restaurant, the body language, even the choice of dishes, because for the faithful, this could signal a return to glory. While no official statements have been made, the excitement is palpable. Could the Raiders' next chapter begin with the return of a coach many thought would never come back? Until then, fans will cling to every shred of rumor, turning speculation into a fevered narrative of hope, nostalgia, and a touch of disbelief. One thing is certain. Wherever this story leads, the Raiders' world will never be quiet again. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.